div, and I'm going to say edit.className, and the class name is going to be edit, and then edit, we're going to set an attribute, so edit.set attribute. Alright, and then the attribute we're going to set is an HTML5 attribute called content editable. Okay, content editable, and that basically just turns it into an input field so that we can actually edit it. Now, just giving that attribute to an element doesn't make it so we can save it or do anything with it. It basically just has the browser turn it into an input field so that we can add something. We'll have to use JavaScript to actually make it do anything. All right, and we're gonna set the next parameter to false because it doesn't have a value. And then we want to add an event listener. So I'm going to copy this. Actually, you know what? I want to put some of these together. The note, they can all go together. And then the close, just make it a little more readable, I guess. Actually, we'll put this there. Alright, so we have our note, close, edit. Okay, so the next thing we want to do with edit is add the event listener. So I'm going to change this to edit. Okay, and the listener that we want is the key up. Okay, the event is key up. So key up. And the function, we don't need to pass that in. And it's going to return self.onKeyUp, which is a function that we haven't created yet. Okay, and then we're going to say the same thing here. We're going to append child to the note object or variable, and this is just going to be edit. Okay, and then finally for edit, we're going to say this dot edit field equals edit. Alright, now for the timestamp. Variable ts for timestamp is, we're going to set an element, create an element, document dot create element, which again will be a div. Alright, and class dot class name, class name will be timestamp. Okay, and then our event listener, TS, and the event's going to be the mouse down event. Okay, and we want to run a function, and we're just going to return the on mouse down function that we'll create. Okay, so that's good. We're going to also append to note. And we're going to say this dot last modified is going to be equal to TS. Alright, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to append. Actually, we're going to say document dot body dot append child. So we're going to add to the body, okay, the body tag, which is basically the entire page. And we're just going to add a note. And then we're just going to return itself, return this, and that looks good. That's our object. It has a few different properties here: note, close, edit, timestamp. So whenever we create a new note, this will all run. Now what we're going to do is create a prototype for the note object, and basically prototype it's basically an extension of the note object, and that's where we're going to define all these functions that we specified, like this on key up, on mouse down. All these functions can be specified within the prototype. Alright, so underneath our note object, alright, we're going to say note dot prototype, and then in these curly braces will be all our functions and properties and whatever we need to extend this note object. The first few methods or functions that we're going to create are called getter and setter methods. So basically we're going to make it so that we can access the internal data of the note object through these methods. Alright, so the first one we'll create is going to be get ID. Alright, so we're going to say if not, and we're going to say underscore ID in this, and I'll explain this in a second. This dot ID, this dot underscore ID equals 0, and then return this dot underscore ID. Basically, where we want to get the ID of the note, and we're saying if there is no ID, then we're going to set this dot ID to 0, and then we're simply returning the ID. So basically this will return either the ID or 0. And now the next method is going to set the ID. Alright, so we'll say set ID, and I'm going to pass in a variable of x, and this is very simple. We're just going to say this dot ID is equal to x, x being whatever we pass in. Alright, so next we're going to get the text. Basically the text is whatever is in the note, so we'll say get text. Alright, and we're just going to return whatever's typed. And you remember we added this, where is it? We set this attribute for edit, we set the attribute content editable, which gives us an input field when we click on it. Okay, so we're going to type in that input field, and then this is where we're going to set it. Alright, so whatever we put in there is going to be, we're going to get it. Okay, so we're going to say return this, which is the note object, dot edit field, which we specified above, dot inner HTML, inner HTML. So whatever's in that input box will be returned with this method. Okay, and just like with the ID, we'll have a set. We'll say set text, and we'll pass in a variable, which will be the text, and then we're simply going to say this dot edit field dot inner HTML is equal to x. Okay, so whatever we put in is going to be assigned. Alright, so next is the timestamp. So we'll say get timestamp, and this will basically be just like the ID when we get the ID. So I'm just going to copy that and just change ID to timestamp. Okay, this timestamp, and then return timestamp. So it's going to get it. If there is no timestamp, then it'll be 0. Alright, and same thing, we want to set the timestamp. Alright, and we're going to pass in X, and we're just going to say this dot timestamp. Actually, we want to put this in an if statement. So if this dot timestamp is equal to whatever is put in, then return. Alright, so here we're going to say this dot timestamp equals X. Alright, so this is just saying if whatever's passed in is equal to the timestamp, then we're just going to return from this function. Alright, so it'll stop there. If not, then we're going to say this dot timestamp equals X, and we're going to use the date function. So variable date equals new date, and here we're going to say date dot set time, and then inside of the set time method we're going to pass in parse float X. And this parse float function, what it does is it takes a string and returns a floating point number, alright, for the timestamp. Alright, and then we want to set this dot last modified dot text content is going to be equal to modified string and then date. And this last modified property comes from up here. When we define the timestamp, you can see we have this dot last modified. Alright, and then this modified string is going to be a function that we're going to create. Alright, so it'll make more sense then. Alright, so the next thing that we want to get and set are the positions of the notes. Alright, so that we have the position so that when we close the browser, we come back, we want them in the same place. So we're gonna create these get and set functions. Alright, so the first one will be get left. So basically we want to get the left position, and that's going to return this dot note dot style dot left. Alright, so that'll get the left position. To set it, alright, so to set it, we want to pass in the position, so X, and we'll say this dot note dot style dot left is going to be equal to X. Alright, actually we should be putting a comma after each method here. Forgot about that. Alright, so that sets the left. Now we want to do the top, alright, because we're going from the left and the top. That's how we're positioning these notes. So actually I'm just going to copy this and change these to top. Alright, so that's the positioning. Next we want the Z index, alright, because we want, I don't have the example here, but we want the notes to be able to go over the other notes. So when we're dragging a note, it should go over the other ones, and that's done with a Z index. Alright, so we're going to say get, actually let's just copy this. Alright, so z-index. These all essentially do the same thing. They either get something or they set something. Alright, so for, actually this shouldn't be x, we want z-index. And then this note style z-index. Okay, and then set z-index, and same thing, we're just going to change this. Alright, so that's the z-index. Alright, so those are the get and set methods for the note object. This video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to stop here, and then in the next video we'll move on to creating our methods like this on mouse down, the close method, things like that. Alright, so we'll do that next.